I'm Iain Curry, this is Chasing Cars, and what do you think about plug-in hybrid electric utes? Does Australia want them? Is Australia ready for them? This is the GWM Cannon Alpha Ultra plug-in hybrid, and it will go 110 kilometres on battery power alone. This isn't in Australia yet, it is being considered, quite possibly coming to Australia. It's a left-hand drive demonstration version come over from China for us to test here, off-road conditions in Australia.
Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
So we already have these Cannon Alphas in our market as diesels and hybrid petrols. But this is going to be a competitor, if it comes, to the BYD Shark and the Ford Ranger plug-in hybrid. They're possibly due by the end of this year or early next year. Size-wise, well, they're bigger than a Ford Ranger and bigger than a Toyota Hilux one-tonner, but smaller than the likes of a Ford F-150 and a Ram. So it's kind of Goldilocks size, if you like, for a lot of buyers. Let's have a look around this one. So let's talk some of the benefits of going plug-in hybrid ute. Well, if it comes in for under $90,000, which would be most likely, it would qualify for fringe benefit tax incentives, hugely important for people in business. Also, if you can run it in a very green way, as in on battery only in city, zero emissions, very, very good. And of course, just for everyday use as well, if you can run for a lot of the time in battery, you're going to be reducing your fuel bills as well as the economy comes right down. Because this hasn't been confirmed for Australia, we've got no ideas what the specification would be, but this would be a pretty good flagship. This is called the XSR model, and as you can see, it is fully off-road ready. Pretty good for Australia, you could imagine. So if I look at things like 2 recovery points, a winch here, this is a steel bumper, and right underneath, good bash plates as well. And if I just take you around the side, have a look at this off-road rubber. That's some serious stuff. Off-road suspension as well. I don't think I've seen a snorkel quite as big as that before. With the 800mm wading depth, that's going to be very useful, you'd imagine. Incredibly muddy kick plate, side steps off the side. And this is very important indeed. The normal Cannon Alphas we get in Australia, they're just leaf sprung rears. These have coil sprung rears, so it's going to make it much better off-road and ideally more comfortable on-road as well. All right, let's go and have a look around the back. If you've not seen a Cannon Alpha's tailgate in action before, you're going to love this. This is very cool. If I press and hold this button, it just drops normally like any other ute. But if I close it over and give it a little gentle tap, boom, split tailgate. How cool is that for easier access? Really nice feature in there. Back of this thing has a nice sprayed in tub, and also, because it's a plug-in hybrid, we have the option of vehicle to load. Really good, useful power point in the back of that tray. Key for our market is it will still tow 3.5 tons, but those plug-in hybrid electric batteries are right under where I'm sitting, and that will compromise the payload. Just 535 kilograms in this big dual cab ute, which is pretty crummy really, isn't it? Round the other side is where you put the petrol in. Here is where you do the electrical charging. Now it will do a maximum of 50 kilowatt public DC charging through this port here. We're told that'll go from 30 to 80% in about 24 minutes. This is your little AC charging port. So if you're using this at home, you can expect to get from 0 to full in about 6.5 hours if you've got a wall box. Prepare yourself, it's an absolute mixed bag in here. There really is a lot going on. The less said about this yellow trim, the better. Maybe someone out there enjoys it, I don't know. What I can tell you is these seats are very soft and spongy. That seems to be the way we're seeing with a lot of GWM products. They're certainly putting comfort first. But as you can see, the technology in here is really quite impressive. This is a 14.6-inch screen, the same as you get in other Cannon Alphas as well. But it's just a reminder of how much showroom appeal there really is for these things. I'm just going to switch it on now. It'll play me a nice little tune sometimes. 12.3-inch digital driver's display in front of me. The graphics are pretty crisp, and I've been operating through here and things do move quite fast. I've got limited amount I can show you and understand about it because it's all in Chinese. But at the same time, using them in Australia, there's lots to go through, lots to enjoy and lots to explore. Being the XSR grade, it is absolutely loaded. There's lots and lots to enjoy. A really good chunky gear shifter, not a blanked button to be found. You've got all your diff locks here, drive modes, wireless charging, even an analog clock here. That's quite posh. And these are quite silvery, chintzy little buttons here, but there's a reasonable quality to it as well, the same as everything else that you go throughout this vehicle. If I just show you in front of the passenger here, have you ever seen a bigger grab handle than this right in front of the passenger? That's a serious thing in case you're doing some absolutely outrageous off-roading. And you'll also notice this Tron-like graphic just above the grab handle. I'm not sure about that either, but it just shows the front end of the vehicle as graphic form. But otherwise, the material quality through here, it's pretty good. You know, you get into many utes and there's a lot of hard plastics and a utilitarian feel. But just throughout this center console, there's nice soft plastics here, soft plastics to the top of the doors, and this padded armrest in the center just shows that if you're on a long journey, you will get some pretty good comfort. Electric seats, a little bit of massage as well. So yeah, it's very well equipped. I'm not sure they'd have to bring in this top grade to Australia. I think would maybe be better with a slightly less luxurious grade to bring the price down somewhat. But it would be interesting to see exactly what they come up with. Despite being a ute, there's a few kind of luxury Mercedes-Benz type qualities. If I shut the door here, you'll notice my seat base is sliding into a recline position. How cool is that? Now, if I pull this down, you can see I've got ample space through the center. That's the benefit of having one of these slightly larger utes. Decent ventilation back here, USB ports, and really cool is the V2L. I've also got a domestic socket down there to charge just about anything. The sunroof isn't quite panoramic style, it stops short of covering the back seats, but I must say it is really lovely to be able to slink back in this seat, to be able to have that recline quality, because so often we sit in the back of utes and they're way too upright. So this is a real benefit. If I just look through the center here, all these buttons, they're quite blingy and silver, but they have a good material quality to them as well. So this is our first drive in the plug-in hybrid Canon Alpha Ultra, and I'm just keeping it in 4 high range at the moment just to see what she'll do, because the idea is I want to try and give it as much time as possible driving in electric only mode, because I think that's the massive point of difference about this vehicle. Because the idea of off-roading in silence with no emissions, windows down amongst nature, that's a really important point of difference that this car must work to its strengths to perform, I reckon. And so as I'm just going along here, absolutely no sound whatsoever. There's no diesel rattle, of course, and there's no petrol from this 4-cylinder firing up or anything like that. And it is just very, very serene. Now, the positive is we've got 300 kilowatts and a massive 750 Newton meters of torque to call upon for when we really do need that extra shove. So if you take us away from the scenario where maybe we're towing and just out in the off-road sphere like we are now, it's going to get you out a lot of trouble, that amount of torque, isn't it? All right, so I've just got a button in the center console that does my EV mode, makes a little noise on my computer, and I've got my giant screen in front as well. That talks me through the drive modes and lets me know. I'm in, unfortunately, Chinese characters here, this being an overseas model, so I can't quite see what's going on. But as we're just purring along here, absolutely no sound whatsoever from the drivetrain. It really is a peaceful way to operate. And I suppose just a few general observations. These spongy seats, for when you're doing a bit of bouncing around off-road, they are so soft and so gentle on your back and backside that even if I hit a decent sized rock like I've just done, there's the combination of very compliant suspension but also that soft seat that you could imagine you could do a fair few hours of off-roading and actually come out the other end in pretty good shape. Another thing I want to talk about is this massive screen and its cameras everywhere. It's got a transparent outline of the vehicle and I can see exactly what's underneath it. It's just used AI and what's gone before and the cameras to show me what's behind. And then of course, most important, like we see in the Ford Ranger, is the forward facing camera, and they're so useful, especially when you're pointing upwards at the sky and you can't see anything else in front of you. But through the screen, I can see exactly what is coming up around that hill and to my sides as well. So really good safety device. And for such a big ute like this, should mean you don't clunk into things either side of the trail, which I'm always fearful of doing. And I'm just going to take it through a bit of water now 800 millimeters wading depth on this thing. That's superb, isn't it? So this thing's going to be no challenge whatsoever. And yeah, once again, I noticed it just needed a little bit more shove from me there. So as soon as I put my foot on the throttle, it knocked it out of EV mode and went in and fired up that petrol engine for a bit of backup. It's a shame it does that, actually. I wish you could leave it in EV mode, and only when the driver decides, like, I need that extra shove, that it would kick in. So that's a little bit of a shame, I think. All right, now we've got our soft sand test. Again, I'm just doing all this in 4H, and it really does just bounce over this sand. It's so soft and easy until I get it stuck. There we go. No, it just easily plows out. Okay, I'm just going through a rocky section now. And the important thing of this vehicle is it's the XSR grade. And that means it gets a completely different rear suspension. Gone are the leaf springs, and we've got coils instead. And that's to go with a higher ride height and knobbly off-road tyres as well as a big snorkel and a winch kit on the front, different bumpers. This is kind of the hardcore one as well. So it really is an interesting package. It'll be fascinating to see if GWM brings it to Australia and in exactly what formats. Because this is a left-hand drive test vehicle, we're only able to test it in controlled off-road conditions, as in a test track here at Norwell. And what I'm looking out for is what it's like to drive such a massive ute, but on electric only. So at the moment, I've just put the ute into EV only mode, and that means the 2-litre 4-cylinder hasn't been asked to fire up. And I'm hoping it'll go some distance without the need for the petrol to kick in, because I really like the fact that this thing will do 110 kilometres on electric only. The way they evaluate plug-in hybrids economy is all a bit of a nonsense. So this car is quoted at just 1.7 litres per 100 kilometre, but that's of course dependent on how you use it. If you're going to run this thing in the city and you're stuck in traffic and you never need to fire the petrol engine up, then you're basically going to use no petrol at all. So you're going to have zero. But as soon as you exhaust those batteries, which is very possible after 110 kilometres, your fuel use is still only 9.3 litres per 100 kilometres. You know, it's a lot by today's standards, but you've got to remember the size of this petrol ute. You know, it's not terrible. So you're not going to be getting outrageous fuel bills once the electricity runs out. So what can I tell you about the ride? Well, we're on a very smooth racetrack, so it's not going to show up too much. This is the XSR grade, and we're on knobbly tyres and off-road suspension was slightly raised up as well, but we do have rear coils, and it does seem to be absorbing the bumps, what little bumps there are, reasonably well. And certainly when we did the off-road track, it was pretty comfortable. And I've just about reached 70 k's an hour, but I still haven't had that petrol engine fire up. So I'm just going to test, if I just bring a bit more speed in but without a heavy throttle, exactly how fast it'll let me get to on electric only, whilst being mindful that there's a braking point at the end of the straight. So I'm at 100 and still just electric only. So that's very encouraging. Right, we've just moved into what we believe is sport mode, because it made a zoomy sound and turned the picture I see in front of me red. And I just put my foot on the brake. I know the petrol engine's working because the rev counter's working, and let's get an acceleration. All right. It's got some guts. It's not what you'd call snap your neck back fast, but there's certainly enough shove to move you along at a hurried enough rate. GWM hasn't decided if they're going to bring this into Australia. Part of their decision-making process will be the response to people like us testing it and the feedback from general Australians that might just buy it. And I suppose that's the question. Do we need plug-in hybrid utes? Should we just wait for full electric ones? I'd love to know your thoughts. Do leave a comment below. What are our final thoughts then on this intriguing plug-in hybrid? Is Australia ready for it? Does Australia want it? And this bit is very important. GWM is going to take note of what we as journalists think and what you, the public, think. So if you actually leave some comments below, GWM are going to be reading it and seeing if it is actually worth bringing this vehicle to market. I, for one, think it is an intriguing thing. I mean, 110 kilometers pure battery range, that opens up loads of possibilities for proper eco off-roading, because this thing is off-road capable. It'd be interesting to know what price they could bring it in for. It definitely has to be under $90,000 and not too much more than the diesel and the normal hybrid. Please do leave your comments in the section below. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. And as ever, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.